Welcome back. This is Daybreak, and thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. So we'll be talking about the Kenya Fire Engine Project, which is building the capacities of counties in response to instances where there are fire outbreaks, and will be joined from the county of Meru by Frederick Kiogora Akandi. Shortly here on the broadcast, he will be live for us, and he leads the Kenya Fire Engine Project. In studio with me is Anthony Mushiri. He is the Emergency Response Manager with the Kenya Red Cross that has been carrying out activities in response to instances where there are fire outbreaks. And beginning with you, Anthony, this is a coordination of a project meant to build the capacities of counties. But as an organization, tell us more about the preparedness level to in terms of responding to fire instances. And you have been doing this, I'm sure, across the country, and whether the country has the required capacity in response to fire incidents.
Thank you, Ayub. It's a pleasure having us as Kenya Red Cross today. And it's, yes, it's a really given fact that the country is not ready for major responses on matters fire. And this is a going concern that every stakeholder is really looking to do their bits, from the fire stations who respond to the fires, from humanitarian organizations like ourselves. Everyone is trying to pull in their bit, but the agenda on matters response has always been bigger than the resources, bigger than the capacities of the people to respond to this. So it's an ongoing conversation. We haven't lost hope, and there's a lot that we can do together just to ensure that then the fire safety agenda, the fire prevention agenda, the fire risk reduction agenda is high on people's minds, and the fact that we all live in houses with gas, we all live in spaces that electricity connections sometimes are manipulated, or sometimes we just live in a space where we're not adherent to what to do whenever fire occurs. So yes, we are seeing lots of ideas coming up now, and the minds have been jogged up. I really pray it's not an emotional thing after the Indarasha fire, and then after 3 months it starts scaling down. I really pray that we keep the momentum in this matter so that then we can institute policies that really will safeguard our interests.
Yeah. We'll talk about the risks that you have talked about, which are just at the doorstep or on the horizon, given some of what we use in our homesteads clearly point that direction. We were with you when Indarasha Hillside Academy happened, and what the school administration and the local community decried was the response. Because they responded first, they were overwhelmed, then they had sought reinforcement from the Nyeri County Fire Brigade, and you remember it's quite a distance, about an hour before you reach Indarasha. Yeah. So in such circumstances, what happens? Because you are looking at a tragedy, and it was so unfortunate we lost 21 kids who are very minor, and you saw the state of the degree of that fire tragedy in Indarasha.
First of all, condolences to the families that lost their loved ones, their children. That was really bad. We, as a country, we let down those children. Starting with the building codes, really. If you look at how our dormitories are structured, both even in well-to-do schools, do we have fire gaps? Do you have proper escapes? Yes, there are safety measures instituted by the Ministry of Education, and how much are we adhering to this vis-a-vis the safety of property or items in schools? Because I think we have more regard on how secure are these dormitories so that people don't steal, and when we forget, we're already exposing ourselves to the same risk now that we were preventing people from getting in, now we cannot even get out, okay? So that was bad. I think largely it has to do with also the building structure, as you saw. That was more of girl sheet material and just timber. I mean, it's time we had a policy conversation around buildings for school-going children, one, and school dormitories. In fact, on a minimum, they should be brick and mortar. On a second level, they should also have like cubicles, which will present gaps, fire breaks, so that if one cubicle is in fire, it may take longer to hit the next cubicle as opposed to just an open dormitory, as we know traditionally. Firefighting equipment, I mean, it was negative. There was no like fire hose there. There was no extinguishers per se, and people resorted to using buckets and trying to just clear out the fire. So a number of things have to be looked into, but even before the fire happens next, even before any institution comes to any school to do checks, I think it's inherent now for all teachers and principals to look back and just say, what can we do even before any other person comes? Because the life is yours first. And part of that is that seek out for training, seek out for escape plans, because these are designs that can quickly be done just at the school level before introducing other people to come into your units to support with now formally training what to do and how to escape and all that.
And do you then in that regard mean the policies in place at the moment are not adequate?
Yes. That's a black and white. They're not adequate. You saw the dormitory. We know very well there are more dormitories out there which are built in the same manner, timber and girl sheet. At these spaces we want now to continue exposing our children to. Should it be a bigger concern that we are building nice classrooms, but where people are sleeping and spending most time when they are most vulnerable asleep, then the building structure is not one that you'd also want to sleep in, you see? So that's a big gap, and I think it's high time. And for policy, it's easier. It's easier to tell schools that for you to build a dormitory, these are the standards. It's easier for the Architectural Association of Kenya to come and say, beyond the building codes and all that they have in safety measures, which is very good in paper, but in practice, how is it then reflective on the ground? Now, we go out to schools and teach children how to prevent fires and how maybe to escape and how to fight small fires that can be caused by maybe a stove. But we can never discuss fighting such big fires. It's just all about escape.
Which brings me to my question now, and in regards to the fire engine county projects and the Kenya Fire Engine Project, which is building the capacities of counties across the 47 devolved units. How then would you be a critical player in this process, given the effort that's undertaken by the Kenya Fire Engine Project? And doesn't it require, in your view, more personnel, more manpower, more resources committed to this cause?
It does. It does require all that. And that's a great initiative rolling out. Predominantly, what we know is that there are more residential fires than there are even the school fires. So residential fires have been even a bigger headache to the country. If you look back at the statistics, be it last year, but on average, every year, we turn around 300 to 330 to 340, 50 fire outbreaks in residential areas. Already this year alone, we are counting at 262. We have some months before the end of the year, and this is one of the high peak seasons during the festive season that we see more outbreaks happening. But again, the idea would be to look at what are the high-risk counties before going to all the 47. It's a good agenda to cover all the 47, but what are the high-risk counties?
Are there high-risk counties?
Yes.
For example?
We're looking at the main cities, Nairobi, Kisumu, fires, and Mombasa. Lots of fire also reported in Nakuru, but predominantly informal settlements take lead in how these residential fires shape out and look out. Yes.
And are there determinant factors in that regard? Do you base it on the population? Do you base it on what are the specific items that makes you make that determination of the priority to be given to certain counties?
So with numbers and probabilities, then you can always score anything. So what is the major cause of fire outbreaks whenever we respond to assist? One, it's usually electric faults. If you look at our informal settlements and how the electrical connections are done, then it already gives you an answer or a headway into a starting. Where do we need to start with this in terms of prevention? Because it's a whole bigger cycle. It's not just about now, how will the fire be fought? Let's move 2 steps backwards and look at preparedness and look at how these electric connections are done. How can we disseminate communities to avoid these kind of connections? Because that's the biggest headache, electric connections and how then electric faults happen. After that, we go to the second level where it's stoves and handling of MECOs and gases inside houses. I know as a country there are all these policies around gases being outside, but how many people, is it that in your house you have your gas cylinder outside your house or it's under the stove, you know? So that's the second level of gas stoves. Of course, last but not least, then comes arson before something like an explosion, which is really never here or there. But we're looking at electrical faults as the major causes of fire. We're looking at stoves in houses and how they're handled. Food is left on the stove and then it's left to burn entirely and ignites a fire. And then the third level is arson, which now brings about the school population fires. Yes.
So at the household level then, and this is where a lot of attention ought to be, unlike institutions and government promises where fire extinguishers are normally, it's basically these promises have those fire extinguishing points where one can pull the pin in case of any fire. So what will happen then at the household level where you are dealing with more contact items that can lead to fire incidents?
Yeah.
And what are the precautions? What are the preventive mechanisms? What's the message to the homesteads? Because it's not as protected as premises are because of the requirement that the law establishes, for example, in the case of residential areas.
One, if you're able to have the cylinder outside of your building, that's like a time bomb. Just have it outside the building. Better have a longer pipe into the kitchen where it's going to be utilized and have like valves if a fire breaks out. That's the biggest agenda.
But is that the case, though?
Yeah.
Given the architectural designs of the buildings we have, especially in the context of Nairobi.
Thank you.
It seems that there's the issue of monetary aspect, that we are gradually moving into a space of being a material society that does not value life and the quality of the structures that are being put up, but just for the case, and then get the tenants, get the rents, but there are no precautionary mechanisms. Is that the case?
You said it right. And for me, without apportioning blame, let's go back to the building codes. Let's go back to how much of apartment spaces does it come with allowances for gas cylinders to be outside of the homestead itself, as opposed to be inside the house. But that's on the lower scale. On the informal structures, informal settlements, where we respond to big fires, then comes the issue about awareness of the communities and about fire connections, electric connections. So this needs to be addressed. Primarily, a lot of training, a lot of dissemination, be it online, be it via just visiting of schools and changing mindsets of the young ones, and then looking at again at the building codes, our infrastructure. When is the last time you saw a fire sprinkler in any, even public buildings in our schools? Do we have fire sprinklers? What other fire suppression measures are there? After that, then it will come about firefighting. And now, before you fight the fire, what are the next steps? What are the ABCs whenever you see a fire outbreak? One, just take off. If it's already big, you can roll down and crawl outside to avoid smoke. 3, when you're already outside, what are the precautions? Don't go back, assemble, do a head count, realize who is there or not. Never make a call about a fire outbreak inside a building. Escape first and then make the call outside. When you're already outside, never go back to rescue. That's not your role. It's a marshal's, it's a fire brigade's role to go back and fight fire. So people need to love life and understand that with fires, it's all about survival first. And then all these other secondary items come through.
Mm-hmm. And how is technology shaping the responses here? Other than the fire engines that we normally see with loads of water, are there instances where a consideration is made for ice balls that can be hurled, like in the case of grenades, which then ends up extinguishing the fire? Is technology changing the landscape and the response mechanisms?
No, not at all. We as I said, we are poor in response, and as such, talking about fireballs. Where have you seen it last? Can you take me to a place where we'll pick it up and just show people, this is a fireball, this is what we're talking about? They come with an expense. So if as small as technology like fire suppressions mechanisms, talking about fire sprinklers, cannot be instituted in our schools, let alone our homes, in public spaces. I remember growing up, most public buildings, I would come across fire sprinklers. I no longer see this. I don't know what happened along the way. But for me, fire sprinklers are a must for schools, because these are dormitories where you know there's a bigger population spending the night there. And whenever fire breaks out, then these sprinklers automate and come into action, even before fire brigade comes in. You mentioned Endarasha. Remember the road terrain to the school. It was so rough. Even for the
distance from the town.
Getting there. Yeah. So let's appreciate the facts. Our fire response mechanism as a country and response to emergencies is at an all-time bad. Mm-hmm. Then let's start working at it. Let's start investing in it. Let's move fire brigade stations from being units in the municipal or in the county government formations to being full departments that people appreciate. As a governor, this is the same fire engine I want to respond to me. But you've put it at a level of being a unit. If you look at the budgets, how much budget is put into these fire brigade stations, we need a lot more attention to them, because these are the first people we call whenever in distress.
Yeah, and is there enough allocation done, in your view, at the devolved units? And is there enough devolution of these departments from the municipal centers, for example, in the former county council setup, as we have talked about? Because the example that we are pegging our arguments on is when Endarasha happened, the local community responded. They were overwhelmed. Some ran with even other persons' children. Yeah. And by the time the response came from the fire department, given the terrain, we talked about the geography, the distance from the town, between the school and the town, how is a devolution of these fire departments and engines important in this regard? One, strategically or in close proximity to learning institutions, and other premises that are deemed important and where there is the likelihood of fire incidents.
It's this big. Beyond just devolving, these are units that are meant to be on sub-county levels, not just close to schools, close to people. So we have a long way to go. The fact that we still think about fire departments as part of the office, such that then they're given a space and then they're known to be, this is the location and we're happy about it. It needs to go beyond that devolution of counties to sub-counties fire stations, okay? After that, then we can look at their response time and that how we build them to be heroes. We need a system where schools can be visiting these fire stations and just appreciating the profession that goes into firefighting and how then these people explain and share what to do during fires. Now, then fires will happen, the shocks will happen, then what to do? If we have simulations around fire escapes for children, be it on video games, be it on gaming, be it on virtual reality. These are spaces, when you talk innovation, that our International Center for Humanitarian Affairs is looking into, where we bring gaming into the space and take it to children using vans, and they get to interact with fire at that comfortable level. Yeah, it's real time, you feel it, but you're not exposed. And then now you know when the fire happens, what would I eventually happen and do, and how do I react? Again, as soon as it has happened, the firefighting has happened, as you said, who takes care of these children? Who takes care of the families? That's then how the humanitarian response comes in. Kenya Red Cross, in a big and large-scale way, comes in to provide first aid to those who are injured and those who are even responding to the fire. We then come in with mental health, psychosocial support. As you saw, a lot of counseling has to happen. These are children who've lost their friends. They are, people who they're very close with. The mental health, psychosocial support to teachers. These teachers have brought these children up for a long time. Of course, the parents, it's really disheartening to, if you remember, these were bodies that you could not see anything. They had to go the DNA way. And that support is not short-term. It's going to go on for some time. Later on, we now need to come back and look at the conversations around how are escape doors, escape windows designed so that then the schools are more safer spaces for our children. There is a whole policy on this. The dormitory windows were opening on the outside, the doors were opening on the outside. Could we do better in terms of the building materials for schools?
We have talked about the geography. We have talked about the capacities of fire departments, and let's talk about the structures. They are going up, and I'm sure you understand the Grenfell fire tragedy in London in the UK, 2017, thereabout. Yeah. A building that's built, for example, the argument is, for example, before the approvals are done for buildings by the Department of Urban Planning in Nairobi, that there's no more land. We have to go up. Mm-hmm. And if you have a building that is 30-storied, I mean, the messaging here changes, is it? Because you can no longer use the elevators in the case of fire instances. Then now you can imagine where there are the elderly, there are children, and any other component of our demography who may not be in a position now to use the staircase in the case of if you have a 30-tower building. I mean, is it an exercise that is too steep? So what are the mechanisms that ought to change with the engineering, that ought to change with technology in the case of such an instance?
So two things. First of all, don't even go far. Even a 5-story building. And the other day, the Africa Fire Mission had a challenge of running up and down the KICC stairs, because this is what firemen do. And that's the inherent need for firemen. When you're thinking about 20 stories, 5-story buildings, running up and coming down, firemen are trained for that. They're trained to come up those buildings, they're trained to come down carrying people. And that's why there is this word about the famous fireman's lift. Mm-hmm. So that's the need we need for firemen. Two, in matters of innovation, there is no two-way. You will never have to use a lift, then you have to use the stairs. Are there escape stairs on the side? Then these are things we need to institute. How many of these are we seeing every day? Mm-hmm. Are they accessible? Are they just there to pass the building code and then they're locked up after the building is officially opened? So again, let's go back to that deeper conversations around every CEO asking, our escapes plan working? Our escape doors and stairs is functional? Who needs to access them? How do we access them? Why do you even need someone who will be responsible for opening? It should be able to open automatically from the inside out, and then people escape. Okay. Thank you.
Let's now get the final comment from Frederick Kiogora Kandi, who is the coordinator of the Kenya Fire Engine Project, joining us from Meru County. Good morning, Frederick. And is the response mechanism to incidents of fire adequate, given the experiences we have had in the past? And how have you capacity built the fire engines and departments across the counties?
Many thanks, Ayub. We started this project about 15 years ago, and we've had some pockets of success in terms of capacity building. We have been able to hold annual trainings for firefighters, mainly in Meru and Tharaka Nithi counties. In terms of the response that we've been able to make, the capacity building has involved both getting firefighters from the UK to train their counterparts in Kenya, and we've also been able to bring train of trainers from Kenya to the UK, where they have undergone courses which they have cascaded to the fire stations that they come from. The project itself has helped to secure and donate 31 emergency response vehicles since 2009 when it started, and I think it's appropriate to say that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We have barely scratched the surface in terms of helping our towns and our counties respond to fire and other forms of disasters.
Frederick, we thank you for your brief input there, joining us from the county of Meru. And because of time, we have to leave it at that. Frederick Kiogora Akande is the coordinator of the Kenya Fire Engine Project, partnering with a team from the United Kingdom to train fire departments across the counties in the 47 unit, and also partners including the Kenya Red Cross, which has been at the first responders point of fire incidences across the country. Anthony Mushiri, thank you to you too as well, the Emergency Response Manager at the Kenya Red Cross, for coming and sharing your insights here on the broadcast. Thanks to you too as well for waking up with us here on Daybreak. We appreciate your company here. The hashtag on X has been Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikari. Make a date tomorrow morning. We'll be here at the same time. Till then, good morning.